Stockton, where's the puck? It came loose on the other side. It's over.
After this, or coming up on this offseason, you've got a bunch of guys on expiring deals. I know you've got Nugent Hopkins, that's $6 million. You've got Adam Larson, that's 4.1. You've got another defenseman there as well.
Barry. He's at like 3.8. Right. You could choose to keep him or choose to let him go. I say let him go. You looked at his points this year, and like you said earlier today, he was on pace for like 70-something points this year. And you think, oh, wow, he was one of the best defensemen in the league. Half of those points were on the power play.
Mm-hmm. And like I told you, if you like, Barry's always been a specialist, even when he was in Colorado.
That's fine.
It's part of the reason they brought him in Toronto. Didn't work out. But it's fine if they want to re-sign him for being a really good power play specialist and an offensive defenseman. But A, he needs to be insulated, and B, you can't be giving him like $6 million. It just can't happen.
No.
But what I was getting at is, yes, you have the cap mobility or the cap flexibility this year. You're losing Nugent Hopkins on a roster that couldn't score goals to begin with. He's been a perennial 50 to 60 point player in his career. How are you replacing that?
They can do one of two things. One, they can just take that money and go test their luck with a free agent. Or B, you can see if you can sign him for a haircut, which is possible. I think if you came to the table with Nugent Hopkins and gave him term, that you could get him for less than $6 million.
I don't think he makes less than $6 million. There's no shot. I really don't. $6 million. It's in that really weird zone, like
between 50 and 60 points. It's like,
it's like the contracts between 4 and $6 million AAV, and when you're between like 40 and 60 points, it's a really tough gray zone, because when you're getting paid that kind of money, it's oftentimes not worth it to the team because your ceiling isn't that high. Like Brandon Saad is another guy that came to mind. So you're always kind of labeled as overpaid, but then you're also not worth you also deserve more than like 3. You know what I'm saying? So it's a really tough place to be if you're a player. And on open market, I think he probably gets more than 6 because he could probably complement another team, or a team thinks that they could.
Because, I mean, once upon a time, Kyle Turris got $6 million per for a long time.
That's nuts, man. That's nuts.
So, yeah, I mean, if Nugent Hopkins said he wants to remain an Oiler.
They all say that.
Well, Adam Larson didn't really. I can get into his quote in a second. But Nugent Hopkins said he wanted to remain an Oiler. However, I'm sure, I mean, he's been there for 10 years now, if you'll believe it.
That's crazy.
Isn't it? He's 27 years old. This is probably his last big contract, unless he gets a bridge, which I don't know if he would take a bridge. No. He can look at his options and say, well, I could sign here in Edmonton for something similar or maybe less, because he wouldn't make more than 6 with Edmonton. He just wouldn't. And roll the dice here and see if we finally win, or I can go somewhere else that maybe is more of a contender and make just as much, if not more money, and maybe for longer term. It might come down to a situation, and I don't know if Edmonton's going to commit to him. It might come down to one of those things where Edmonton doesn't necessarily offer him an extension and waits till, UFA time to sign him, and he might just say, hey, I have better options, or he might consult his agent beforehand and say, I might have better options here. Because Nugent Hopkins needs to do what's best for him. Loyalty doesn't mean anything. You gave that organization 10 good years. You should be proud of what you did there. And you didn't win anything. Frankly. It's not your fault, but you didn't win anything.
Right.
You can go and continue to try to carry that second line with, Cassian and Gaten Haas on your wings. Or you can, see if a contender wants to sign you.
And they will. He'll have tons of offers. But, when I'm looking at this team, it screams to me that they need a GM that can be creative.
Yes.
You can't move a lot of these middle six to bottom six contracts for just nothing, right? Because if I'm the GM of Edmonton right now, I want to shed as much salary as possible. Well, that's not going to be possible with a lot of their contracts, right? So you've got the expiring guys, that's fine. But some of these other guys like Cassian and Chason and Haas,
Well, Chasen's up after this year.
fine. You get the point. These guys got to be flipped for another guy on a different team that may be underperforming,
A younger guy.
that may be a little bit younger with a little bit lower ceiling, but more sure in his abilities. A guy that Edmonton identifies as a guy that could fit their system or that they could kind of take on as a reclamation project and swing and make a trade.
Yeah.
And they need to just make smart hockey trades. That's the only way that I see them really elevating themselves to a true contender. You know, I look at like what Bowman did with Nick Schmaltz, right? You had a guy who did not fit the system. He was a pass first, I mean, basically like a pass 99% of the time type player. And you didn't really need that because you had Kane. And Bowman identified that he had another option in Dylan Strome and Brendan Perlini coming back that would make his team better, in his opinion. And it's just
Fill needs.
filling needs, exactly. But it also benefited Arizona greatly too, right? You had a great player, you had a player that you liked, but instead of just saying, I'm going to just keep you here because I'm too afraid to do anything, you took a risk. And I would say after that trade, the Blackhawks were a better team, even if it was marginally. But now you flipped Perlini for Regula, who's looking like a great defenseman or could be a great defenseman.
And you could flip Strome for assets.
You can flip Storm for assets. Like it's just that creativity. And it's such a, like, it's not even that creative of a trade, right? Like I'm not trying to pump up Bowman or anything
called
like
asset
that.
management.
Exactly.
And it's not just let's go get the biggest fish like they did with Lucic.
Right.
You know, small brain moves. It's what can we do that's under the radar and efficient.
Yes. And dude, Ken Holland is not that guy. I'm sorry.
Well, he won multiple Stanley Cups. And it wasn't because
His last one was over 10 years ago. I don't care.
no.
It's not relevant.
where I'm going with this, he didn't win multiple Stanley Cups because he made smart moves. He won multiple Stanley Cups because he started with a decent team and just sold off assets to make it better.
Right. Yeah. Right. So if you're just gonna sell
Bowman when he first started in
futures,
Chicago.
right? So if you're just gonna sell futures to get roster talent, that's easy,
Well,
right?
He still had to get enough talent to make that happen.
Sure.
But
It's simpler.
yes, and to be honest, he might need to do a little bit of that too and say, hey, I've actually got a pretty decent prospect pool here, and none of them seem to be working. Like Evan Bouchard is soon to become the Frank Corrado of Edmonton because he's not really getting playing time and there's nobody better playing in front of him. So why
I've
not?
seen Edmonton fans like him, but you have him.
Fans might, but I don't think the organization really likes him yet.
You have him. You have Broberg.
Yep.
You've got a couple of forwards.
Ethan Bear is sick,
Yeah.
but he should be a roster player. Like,
Right.
work with it. I saw something like when he's on the ice, their zone exits and shot metrics are like astronomically better than when they are without. Listen to that. Okay. Adam Larson needs to go, first of all.
Well, yeah.
Like, shed the stink of that.
Yeah.
He's not that bad, but he's not that good either.
No.
Build around Nurse, build around Bear.
And
I mean-
keep one of Broberg or Bouchard.
I mean, what we're forgetting too is they went a whole nother season without Oscar Klefbom,
That's right.
who is their best defenseman.
That's right.
Honestly, if there's a taker for Oscar Klefbom, you trade him. At this point, he's worth
You
more.
think?
He's worth more to you being traded for assets than sitting on your roster not playing.
Yeah, you're selling low on him because he hasn't been playing. That's besides the point, though. I think
You
if
gotta get in the other series at some point too, right?
of course, I know, I understand. We'll wrap it up pretty soon, but the one of the last things I want to say is like, if I'm Edmonton, this first round pick this year, it is gone. Trade it and get something
Don't think
to
twice
help your
about
roster.
it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's funny. I feel like a lot of people think Edmonton is just a couple moves away. I don't think they are. They have a ton of work to do.
I could see both ways. I could see where you think they have a lot of work to do, and also I could just see them figuring it out overnight with the youth talent coming up, and with Connor McDavid being who he is. They get a goalie in there. You never know, man.
Here's a stat for you. McDavid in 56 games had 105 points.
Yeah.
Do you know how many total goals Edmonton scored last year as a team?
I have no idea.
It was like 184 or 186, something like that. So the quick math is that McDavid factored in on 57% of Edmonton's total goals last season. And to kind of put this into perspective, like, hockey isn't like basketball, right? Like, if you took a guy like LeBron James and said, yeah, he factored in on 57% of his team scoring,
You're like,
that wouldn't be like that outrageous,
Like, that's
especially
it?
because
Yeah.
it's right, especially because it's LeBron James. But for hockey, when you're playing as a forward, 20 to 23, 24 minutes a night,
If you're lucky.
that is unbelievable. Like, anything north of 40, I would say, is pretty nuts. And this man is at 57% last year. That is all you need to know. They don't have depth. It's that simple. He cannot be the only guy that produces, because we saw what happens when you get into the playoffs and teams actually game plan against you because, oh shit, the games mean something. All Winnipeg had to do is say, we're going to scheme around McDavid and Draisaitl and fuck the rest.
And you know what that constituted as? Taking a lot of hits and, stick checks that could have been penalties or should have been penalties, and they don't get called because it's the playoffs.